Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and get your wand, your robes, and your owl ready, because today I'm going to give you some advice on how to run a Harry Potter inspired RPG adventure. Whether you're running this for kids or for some hardcore Harry Potter fans, I think you'll find lots of magic, mystery, and adventure in the Warlock's Tunnel. As a little backstory, I was lucky enough to work on the very first Harry Potter video game over 20 years ago now. But I distinctly remember as I immersed myself in that universe how much I loved all the attention to detail that existed, and I always thought it would make a fantastic setting for a tabletop RPG. But Hogwarts is also not the easiest setting to write adventures for 3 reasons. One, its best stories are mysteries, and mysteries are tough genres to begin with for RPGs. 2, the setting is contained and there's lots of established canon to deal with, which makes ongoing adventures really difficult for GMs to manage. And finally, magic, which is the key mechanic of this entire universe, is either really rigidly defined or is just hand-waved away. That set of puzzles just makes Hogwarts and the Harry Potter universe a really tough setting to work in compared to other established IP settings. With the Warlock's Tunnel, a totally unofficial adventure written by one fan, I try to work through those challenges. The adventure's totally free, and it's designed for around 4 to 5 players and can be finished in one session. It blends mystery, puzzle solving, and action all together. There's versions available for GURPS, which actually works really well for the Potter universe, and Rysis, which also works really well because it's so incredibly rules light. At the end of the video, I'll discuss some of the pros and cons of each of these systems for the Potterverse, but honestly, you can easily port this adventure to any system you really like. To make it easy for GMs to run, the Warlock's Tunnel includes pre-generated characters, a ton of handouts, and some VTT assets too. Now, before I walk you through the Warlock's Tunnel, I will remind you that there are spoilers ahead, so if you're thinking about playing in this adventure, you better turn around unless you want to die a most painful death. The Warlock's Tunnel is set in 1987, about 4 years before Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Before Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This means that Hogwarts is going to largely be familiar to players. There are a lot of the same professors hanging around Hogwarts, but also some new ones. This era of the Harry Potter universe isn't especially explored, so as a GM you'll have a lot of flexibility, at least for a few years. The setup is this. A beloved Hufflepuff prefect, Jacob Kingsley, has gone missing. He disappeared shortly after delivering 2 Slytherin students to detention. Nobody is taking this disappearance seriously, at least not yet anyway, but the PCs are begged by some younger Hufflepuff students to find him because they're really worried about their friend. This is the main mystery of this adventure. What happened to Jacob Kingsley? And now the PCs are on the case. Their first stop will naturally be to go talk to those 2 Slytherins that got detention, Maximilian Crixley and Artemisia Parkinson. I mean, they're the obvious culprits, right? They're Slytherin, and they're the ones who snuck a rare green salt marsh moss slug out of potions class and chopped it up and put it into Gryffindor pudding, and it was totally... Let's keep going. Maximilian Crixley and Artemisia Parkinson don't really want to talk to younger students, at least not without a price. They're way behind on their herbology homework, and so they suggest that if the PCs do their homework for them, maybe then they'll say what happened that night on the way to detention. So in exchange for information, the PCs just have to do about 10 hours worth of Slytherin homework. The adventure even includes a fun handout, which lets the players literally do the homework. For some reason, every time I've run this adventure, there's always one player who actually wants to do Hogwarts homework. It's there if you want it. Now, if the PCs purposely do bad on the homework or they're just sloppy, there's a good chance they'll get caught for cheating and they'll get sent to detention as well. The adventure includes a little optional side quest where the PCs have to clean Snape's potion cellar, which was mysteriously wrecked and destroyed one night, and they can find some more clues there, but that's totally optional and it's just useful if you want to extend the adventure. Anyway, the 2 Slytherins will eventually give up the information that Jacob Kingsley took them on a strange detour the night that he took them to detention. he stopped by the Architect of Hogwarts statue. This statue was recently hexed by some troublemakers and it was moved for cleaning. But Jacob went into that room and spent a few minutes taking notes on the statue, and he mumbled something about seeing an unfamiliar ghost in this part of the castle. Eventually he got frustrated and gave up and dragged the two Slytherins to detention, but the Slytherins thought that whole thing was weird. So now the PCs have their next lead. They have to find the Architect of Hogwarts statue, break into the room where it's being kept, and when they study it, they'll find on the rear of the statue is a blank plaque. Casting a reveal secret spell on the plaque, discovers something written on the back.
I, the Architect of Hogwarts, have hidden the last of the lapis spiritum deep in the Warlock's tunnel. I only leave this clue to its existence in the event of extraordinary circumstances related to the defense of this school. Otherwise, may it stay forever hidden from those who might use it for their own dark agendas.
The PCs won't have any idea what lapis spiritum is, but it sounds serious. And where do you go to find out something more in Hogwarts? The library, of course. Some brief research in the library will discover that lapis spiritum, also known as ghost stone, was supposedly built into the foundations of Hogwarts back when it was built about 1,000 years ago. But this material is supposed to be legendary, not real, and any professors they ask about it will just laugh and wave their hands and say that don't worry about it, this is all just nonsense. But the PCs will also discover that there's a book in the restricted section, Mag & Luck's Poetics of Magical Space, which tells more about ghost stone. Now, getting into the restricted section of the library isn't easy for second-year Hogwarts students. They'll have to find a way to get a professor to give them a note to allow them in, or sneak in the middle of the night. This is a bit of an open-ended part of the adventure that lends itself to player creativity. The adventure includes a Defense Against Dark Arts lesson where the PCs can deal with Welsh crimbles to impress Professor Ranklord, the current Defense Against Dark Arts teacher, or they can try stealthing their way into the library in the middle of the night and deal with Filch and Mrs. Norris. It's all classic Hogwarts hijinks here. Once the PCs get their hands on the secret book, they'll discover that ghost stone actually has two uses. The more well-known use is to give architecture a sort of semi-sentient intelligence. But a more vile purpose, when treated properly with dark magic, causes the stone to act as an insidious poison to anyone who's Muggle-born. Second, the PCs will discover that there was a tunnel called the Warlock's Tunnel, which was dug underneath Hogwarts that led to a mine of ghost stone, and a ghostly train called Cotterley's Freight Train transported the ghost stone into Hogwarts during its construction in 990 AD. But nobody knows where this tunnel is or even if it's still around. Right after this discovery, there's a commotion in Hogwarts. Several Muggle-born students, including the ones that asked the PCs to find Jacob Kingsley to begin with, have taken deathly ill. They were practicing dueling in the owlery when suddenly they fell ill, their skin turning gray and their nails and teeth a bright green color. It seems like somebody's using this ghost stone to some sinister effect here. The owlery is largely abandoned. Students really don't like going there. It's a pretty boring place. However, when the PCs arrive, they'll discover one of the rooms has been used recently. There's this giant fanged owl on the wall, and the PCs will also find that there's a recently written note on the floor that lists some ingredients that were recently stolen from Snape's potion cellar. Clearly, someone's been through here recently that shouldn't have been. With some puzzle solving, the PCs can open that owl carving into a door, where they find an ancient lift that descends into the foundations of Hogwarts. The operator of this lift is an old ghost named Oswald, who tells the PCs that after hundreds of years of disuse, a strange man has been taking the lift up and down recently, and that once he even brought an unconscious boy down with him. The PCs will no doubt take the lift and find themselves deep underneath Hogwarts. They have to navigate through some caves here, and there's some classic challenges for them to overcome. For example, there's this rolling field of sentient cave mushrooms that can make them instantly fall asleep when they get touched, and there's these monsters, these Scorpiosi, who are scorpions with tentacles that were put here to guard the tunnels. Players can either deal with these challenges head on or they can use their wits to avoid them. There's actually a lot of room for magical creativity in these tunnel challenges. Finally, the PCs arrive at a large open cavern where they see a ghostly train burst into the room carrying loads and loads of ghost stone. A lonely figure begins to unload the train, and the PCs now know that this man is hauling ghost stone into Hogwarts to poison all the Muggle-born students. This man's name is Aphados Wilkes. He was a sympathizer of Voldemort's and he's now on the run. He found the original transportation system that took ghost stone into Hogwarts to help build it, and he came up with the plan of using his dark magic to poison the school. Aphados Wilkes was seen by Jacob Kingsley one night, and so Aphados attacked him in the corridors shortly after he brought those Slytherins to detention and then dragged him down to this cave while he's figuring out what to do with him. The PCs will see Jacob's poor unconscious body not too far from the train. This is the grand finale of this adventure. The PCs have to team up, take on a Death Eater, and rescue Jacob Kingsley. Fortunately, they have surprise on their side. Aphados Wilkes is dangerous. He can fling Crucio curses with ease, but with some cleverness, the PCs can overcome him. Whenever I've run this adventure, my players always surprise me with the weird and crazy ways they decide to take down Aphados Wilkes. One time they set up an elaborate set of distractions and then ambushed him from behind. Another time they went and gathered those mushrooms, the ones that can put you to sleep, and they just dumped a pile on him from above. It worked out great. With Aphados Wilkes apprehended and Jacob Kingsley rescued, the PCs will be the talk of Hogwarts. They'll probably get a big feast, lots of house points, and some winks from their favorite teachers. You know how these endings go. Well, that's the summary of the Warlock's Tunnel. I've run this adventure many times, and a lot of times for kids who are fairly new to role-playing. I think it does a good job feeling like a Harry Potter adventure, largely staying true to canon and giving players lots of agency to use different spells and abilities to solve the adventure's challenges. If you're a big Harry Potter fan, let me know if you agree if my adventure did all those things. And while you're picking apart my Harry Potter canon, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button so you can hear more videos like this soon. Now, at the beginning of this adventure, I said that there were versions available for GURPS and Rhizus. Those are radically different game systems, but I think the adventure works for both of them pretty equally. And they're both free in some form or another. But here's some pros and cons of each system if you're thinking about running this adventure with one of them. For GURPS, first understand I wasn't using all the crazy advanced rules that you can easily layer into that system. I was mostly just using the free GURPS Lite rules. In GURPS, you just roll 3 dice and try to roll equal to or under your skill level. It's actually pretty easy. If you roll under a lot, you do something really well. If you roll under a little bit, you do it just barely well. It's actually super easy to explain, and I've had players pick that up in no time. There are 2 main advantages to using GURPS for a Harry Potter game. The first and biggest is that the default magic system in GURPS is like 90% identical to the one in the Harry Potter universe. Wizards have to start with the basic simpler spells and then learn them and work their way up to the more advanced complicated spells. For example, to learn Fireball, you first have to learn Ignite Fire, then Shape Fire, then Create Fire, and finally you get Fireball. This is super close to how students at Hogwarts learn magic, and there's a spell equivalent to like 99% of the spells used in all the Harry Potter books and movies. The second reason to use GURPS is that the granular skill system in GURPS actually does a really good job at separating characters out from each other, especially when they're all basically the same kind of second-year Hogwarts wizard or witch. But with the GURPS skill system, you can have herbology experts and daredevil broomstick riders and athletes and potions experts and natural leaders. These kinds of specializations really help the characters feel very different from each other. Now, the downside to GURPS is that to make your own characters, it's just going to take you way more time and work than most other game systems these days. Some players like that attention to detail during character creation, others don't. Younger players, honestly, I can't imagine them spending the amount of time to figure all that out. They'll just get bored and just want to play. But because this adventure includes pre-generated characters, most of those problems go away in this case. Now, Rhizus, on the other hand, is super easy. Your character has 4 loosely defined cliches with some dice attached, and you can kind of just make stuff up. For example, all the characters included with the Warlock's Tunnel have second-year Hogwarts student as a cliche, usually with 2 dice. So if you want to cast a Lumos spell, roll 2 dice and beat a target number. You want to disarm somebody, roll 2 dice. You want to remember where that architect statue is hidden somewhere in Hogwarts, roll 2 dice. It's all very, very easy and lets players focus more on the action and the role-playing and way less on what's written on their character sheet. The sheer simplicity and looseness of the Risus rules also lead me to my 2 downsides that come with it. First, the player characters just don't feel that different from each other. They can kind of all use the same abilities and cast the same spells, and so there's just not a lot of mechanical separation between them. This might be a problem for players who want to see that their character can do something very different from what other characters can do. The other potential problem with Risus is that for player groups that are familiar with other popular role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, they may decide those rules are just way too simple and require too much improv on behalf of the players and GMs for this to really work. So pick which system's right for you and your group. And if you've ported this adventure to any other systems, let me know how that went. So that's Harry Potter and the Warlock's Tunnel. If you're looking to take a trip to Hogwarts, take a look at this adventure. You can download it for free at oneshotadventures.com. Until next time, I'm JC, and I'll see all you witches and wizards again soon.